This is our next lesson on human resource management, and I'll probably aim to finish human resource management today. Uh, what we've looked at so far is basically in terms of what is a HR manager. So what's the management process involved with? We had focused a bit on planning. Generally, in terms of seeing how many employees you'll need, how many you'll need in the future, will people be leaving, what are their qualifications, and then we looked a little bit at the actual recruitment process, and that's kind of what we finished up on. So we looked at the idea, obviously, that if you're going to try to get people into a role, if you need an employee and you need to hire somebody, that you're going to have a job description, person specification, so details of the job, the person, the qualifications you'd need from that person, and then the job ad. So we looked at other things there in terms of screening candidates. So you have 50 people that apply for the job. What is the suitable who are the suitable candidates, and obviously they'd need to hit certain markers. We'd selection tests, maybe if you have a very large company, as I said, the likes of Google, the likes of Amazon, they would have other forms of tests that they would give people just to give an idea about what these people can offer. So you have intelligence tests, personality tests, work samples. So the idea obviously that you get them to sample in a group to see what they would do together for a work sample group. Personality test and intelligence test maybe could be to do with the type of role, that if there was a role and they had to be very outgoing, creative people that are involved in trying to market something, you might need them to have a certain personality type. They probably would need to be some form of an extrovert, and that they'd need to be outgoing, and they'd need to have a creative mind. So you're just testing to get a better understanding of who the employees are. Yeah, I mean, just for yourselves, I suppose, down the line, after college, the Leaving Cert results and your college grades only go so far, although they are important, because without, having, I suppose, respectable qualifications, depending on the role you're going for, they'll only kind of get you within within a certain distance, and after that, it really comes down to your qualifications, your experience, and certain things about who you are. Whether you can show them here in these tests, or you can show them through prior experience. Interview is obviously a formal interview between your HR and managers here, and then you have your candidate. You have one-to-one interviews and panel being multiple people. Reference check, we had said, was that going back over those persons' qualifications and making sure that everything is in line. As I said before, without a reference check, I could probably go on Photoshop right now. I could design an image to say that I am a honors graduate from the Harvard Law, and I could try to become a solicitor, and I could more or less print off certifications for myself that were not true, in order to pretend that I had certain expertise for a role. And many people do that, actually. There are some people who get away with it, and eventually get caught and receive their prison sentence in a lot of cases. So the reference check is there to go back and to see if you really have the qualifications you say you have, and also to contact your previous employers and to get an impression from them as to what you were like as a worker. Job offer is you're offered the job. One thing for the job offer, we send in writing and including details of what actually the job is involved. So, title, salary, and length of probation period, in terms of, okay, maybe you have the job for 3 months on a trial basis, and then after that you can have it. So probation period means that generally you can be given a job. Let's say the probation period is 6 months. That within the first 6 months, it's your job to obviously impress, and then after that, if you haven't impressed, then the company is within their rights to let you go, because the probation period is almost like a trial. So training and development. So training is a process that ensures that employees have the skills, knowledge, and attitudes needed to carry out their jobs effectively. If they don't have some of the knowledge and expertise, then it's training. You develop that. So on the job training. So with any job type, As I said before, from even some of you may have part-time jobs now. Some of you may not have part-time jobs now. In most cases, some 17-year-old that rocks in to work in a hotel as a waiter or waitress only has a certain amount of knowledge. I'm sure you've all been to a restaurant. You know what a waiter does. You know what a waitress does. You feel like you can fill in the role, but there's lots of things that you would not be aware of, and you would need on-the-job training. And these are a few of the things that could be factored into that. Work shadowing. Let's just say that I go back to when I'm 17 and I apply for a job in the summer as a waiter, and I'm brought into a local restaurant and I am shadowing somebody who's been working there for many years. I'm following them around basically. Maybe not directly to somebody's table, but I'm within earshot of them all the time, and I'm kind of I'm becoming very aware of what they're doing, and I'm learning from watching them doing the job. A demonstration is obviously somebody showing you how to carry out the role. Maybe they're showing you how to deal with a customer. Maybe they're showing you how to deal with the cash register. These things that you'd imagine. And job rotation is the new employee moves around the firm doing different jobs, generally just to get used to the company or organization, or getting used to different kind of roles within the business. These are on the job training. As you'd imagine, you're not going to just jump straight into a role and get started without some form of training. Off the job training. So depending on the role, some different career options, there might be a lengthy process of training. Even when you get a job, your studies don't always finish. So this type of training can take place in venues outside the workplace and include workshops, demonstrations, lectures, and courses. You'll find that a lot for different careers, especially IT or law or any medical practice. If you were to, in the future had aspirations to work in any of those fields, you better enjoy studying, I suppose, to a degree, not to a massive degree, but if you take a career in law, you will never stop learning, and you will always have to update yourself in courses. There is always changes to the law. There's always changes to very, very minute details that you would need to stay on top of, and you need to study. And IT would be a huge one as well. Anyone involved in that, there's constantly new changes coming in, so that they would have to uptake in courses every year, every 2 years, or anything like that. And that's a part of the training for the career. Most often than not, if you engage in that training, you might get a pay rise at the end. So those careers generally are they're amongst the higher paying careers that you can get involved in. Medical practice and IT management, and anything, I suppose, in a law firm. So those kind of careers, your learning never stops, and off the job training takes a huge focus. Workshops, demonstrations, and lectures as well being a part of your training. Development includes taking educational courses or career plans, again very similar to what I said about off-job training. Increases self-esteem and prepares them for promotion. Maybe you're working in an office and you want to take a role down the line as manager. You go in, you develop yourself by doing a course on leadership. You come away from the course and you feel like you're ready to apply for the role as manager because you have your extra credentials to your name. You've an extra qualification. So advantages of training and development will quite obviously, if you're going to train and develop an employee, you're probably going to increase their productivity because they have additional knowledge and skills. Industrial relations, so basically that the employees understand the quality standards expected by them. Industrial relations would be your relationship between your manager and your employees, obviously with the correct training. You're learning from your manager, and generally there's less mistakes. And future managers, so anybody that wants to uptake a role as a manager would generally need to have some form of development and time spent learning about leadership. So you go through more training and developing, and you potentially are somebody who could be a candidate for being a manager in the future. I would say, let's be real about it, in most cases the incentive for the employee to further develop their training is to increase the job prospects for them in the future, or for current financial rewards. Obviously, rewards being money that you receive for your increased qualifications. If you're in a role, for example, if you're an accountant and you leave college, you do 4 years in college, and you learn about you major in accounting, and you decide you want to become an accountant. You have another 3.5 years of exams to do, and your pay during those 3.5 years while you're doing your exams is it's probably slightly below the average national pay while you're doing those exams. But once you've those exams done, your pay would rise quite a bit. Obviously, because you've earned additional qualifications and skills, you're generally receiving quite a bit of a financial reward, as would make sense. So non-financial rewards with employees that are not in the form of money, there might be, you could have something like, I know it might seem trivial, but a parking spot, or you might get the office, or you might have been you might have had a cubicle in an office where you've had your little corner, and now you might be given a whole office to yourself. It might sound trivial enough, but if you're working in a business and there's not much parking spaces, and you have to park in a public car park 5 minutes on the road, being rewarded with a car spot outside of the business for some would be a massive reward. So depending on where you are. So there are obviously examples of non-financial rewards as well. Performance appraisal. So a review of the employee's performance, generally carried out by their manager or a HR manager. So performance appraisal would be the same. Obviously, if I'm appraising you as students, I'm going through in terms of, okay, look, at the start of the year, I was talking to each of you, let's just say, and if you were in 6th year, I generally would do this more. I'd set out an understanding with you as to what you wanted to achieve in the Leaving Cert for business. You would have a target in place. Let's just say you want to achieve a certain grade, a H1. That's your target. Throughout the first couple of months, I'll assess how you are doing in class. You'll probably be assessing that yourself anyway. We'll have tests, we'll have concrete numbers as to how you've been doing. And then, at a certain point, whether it's Christmas or the parent-teacher meeting or anything like that, we can go through that and say, look, this was your standards. Whatever John's standards was that he wanted to get a H1. His work at the start of the year was to that standard, and his test results were very good. But as Christmas came, his work dropped off, his studying was non-existent, and his grades suffered significantly. Obviously, if he still wants to set a goal of getting a H1, then he needs to up his game. That's your performance appraisal. You can imagine for an employee, it's very similar. Just basically discussing how they've been doing with the job, and maybe what they could do to increase their work performance. So benefits of performance appraisal. I mean, just think of this in the same way. What would the benefit be if I decided to have a plan in place with each student in 6th year before their Leaving Cert, and we are able to go through and say, okay, maybe let's just focus on this and obviously improve your grade. So we can identify training needs. If I felt like, let's just say, if I suppose from a company, if you felt like there was an employee that was lacking in their IT skills, maybe we need to go and get them additional help for IT. So maybe they're not trained up enough. Promotion, obviously, if you're talking to somebody, you might get an idea about what kind of characteristics they have, and maybe this person could be good as a manager down the line. Performance related pay, generally in terms of deciding, okay, if we achieve a certain target, you can obviously have your increased bonus or whatnot. Motivation, in general cases, discussing with a manager as to how you're doing and what you could do in the future to improve is generally going to result in increased motivation. And industrial relations, as I said, remember, industrial relations is that relationship between the employee and employer, and you want that to be good. Just a few more things to look at. So employee-employer relationships, as I said before, this is your industrial relations. So a positive HR relationship, human resource relationship, can result in increased staff productivity. Less industrial action, being a strike, and improved recruitment and retention of staff. So obviously maybe it might improve their recruitment process if everybody gets along. Google is a great example that most employees from Google would say that they're extremely happy with their job, and that's why Google has more applications than any other company in Ireland for new people trying to, you know, get a job there. And retention of staff is that people obviously stay, and you don't have half your staff leaving every year. So having a positive employee-employer relationship increases staff productivity. There's less chance of a strike happening, and generally people want to get work there, and people will stay working there. I think just 2 more slides just to look at. So employer-employee relationships, so honest communication, so what's involved in it. Obviously from a manager standpoint and an employee standpoint, you want to have an honest communication. You want to know exactly what's going on in the company, and from that point then you can work on improving it. Making sure there's the correct training in place, social activities generally in terms of maybe as a group bonding. The Maslow social needs is just kind of more of a separate thing to what we're looking at in business, but I'm sure you might have heard it before, being that your social needs would be that you want to feel wanted and you'd enjoy working with other staff members. And it's not just a case of I go to a job to get money. You want to feel like you're a part of the job and that you have you fit in, I suppose, socially in that organization. So you see that there will be certain events that might be organized. Even in school, as you are in 6th year, there are a number of different events organized for 6 years in school. It's kind of a bonding for that class, and generally people bond more in 6th year, and it's probably one of the more memorable years in school compared to any other year. And you mightn't have as much bonding events in 5th year, but you will have more in 6th year, because obviously it can be a stressful enough year, and it's just a social activity to increase, I suppose, or reduce stress, I would say, in most cases. Health and safety, making sure that everything is okay from that standpoint, and grievance procedure, which would be important, that if anyone was to obviously lose somebody close to them, that the correct procedures would be in place to deal with that. Employee-employee relationships are very important. The benefits is that you would motivate the employee. It might be lower absenteeism, and that the employee recruitment and retention, that we're able to retain our staff by holding on to them, by them being happy, and that generally creates kind of a positive atmosphere on the company, and it's easier to recruit people. Good bit of detail. I do go through it quite quickly. I'm going to be giving you a few questions between now and next week on this kind of stuff, in terms of what kind of the questions look like and what might you be expected to write about. But I would say it's well, for me, I feel like it's an interesting topic, because I feel like it's incredibly relevant to even your age group, as to what's maybe might come for you down the line. And regarding the slides, a couple of things. I'll actually, do you know what, I'll write them down. I'll write them down as to what I want you to take down from the slides. Thanks for listening.